Well, it seems like the era of exclusives on Xbox and PlayStation are coming to a close. Got a couple of articles here I want to talk about, one for Xbox and one for PlayStation, and talk about the bigger effect that this is having on gaming. I think overall it's going to be a good thing. However, there are some caveats. The biggest one being that this is not the end all be all solution to their dwindling sales figures that they think it is. But we'll get into that in a moment. Before we do, I wanted to talk about the gameplay footage today. This is a game called Fumes. It's just something I found out on Steam, and I've been really digging it lately. I'll put a link to the demo in the description, and you can just download it and play it. I mean, this is just the demo. So if post-apocalyptic driving, shooting, games that are looking like Mad Max with PS1 graphics are your thing, then definitely check it out. So let's take a look at these articles. First one is PlayStation will lose Final Fantasy exclusives as Square Enix announces plans to bring more of its games to Xbox and PC. So, this is part of their financial report from the end of the fiscal year 2023-2024. Square Enix declares that it will begin shipping future titles on multiple platforms such as Xbox, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation, and PC as part of a new business strategy to bring in more customers. Now, it looks like they're going to be creating new titles based on some of their older IPs. So think about, Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, Kingdom Hearts, and so forth. I think it's a good idea to target more platforms than PlayStation for sure. So, it's nice to see that coming to Xbox and Switch and PlayStation, or PC and PlayStation. But overall, I don't think it's going to solve their dwindling sales figures. I think it's going to improve things for sure because you're targeting more platforms, you're targeting more potential customers, but you got to make good games too. And these days, AAA studios are effectively making, glorified cutscene simulators, interactive movies, whatever you want to call them. There's just no challenge. There's no good gameplay loop. There's no good hook that brings people in, that makes them interested in playing that game, and no novelty to it. It's just yet another story that looks like a Square Enix story or looks like a Ubisoft story. And if you wanted to watch an Ubisoft movie, you could just watch a regular movie, and it'll be more entertaining than anything Ubisoft can pull off. So I think that that's what people are getting sick of. I think they need to get back to basics, get back to the era when people were really enjoying these games, and take a look at those games and take a look at how the gameplay loops worked. Heck, take a look how the mechanics worked. Get back to those level of detail, because that's what sold people on games. Good character development is certainly important, and good plot lines and good story, but having a good gameplay loop is what keeps butts in seats. It keeps people playing the game. And a prime example of that is actually the gameplay footage that I'm playing now. I mean, this gameplay loop has managed to keep me entertained and keep me going way better than anything that the AAA studios are putting out these days. So a simple little indie game can do it way better than anybody else can. And there is not a line of real dialogue in this at all. It's all text based, but you don't get a lot of text. I mean, it's not a lot of exposition. It's just driving and shooting. But it's fun and it's engaging, and it's still early access, and this could expand into who knows where. I mean, I'm sure they have big ideas for this game, but even as it stands right now, it's more engaging than what AAA is putting out. So speaking of which, let's switch over to Xbox. Upcoming Xbox exclusives expected on PlayStation 5 by the end of 2024. So as Square Enix is ditching PlayStation, Xbox is ditching itself, and this is coming as a rumor. It's a guy, Nate Drake, on Reset Era. He's known for fairly good leaks, but it is just speculation at this point, just rumor leaks. But you can take it with a grain of salt, but I think it makes sense, and it certainly has some legs to it, because this is not something that hasn't been talked about in Xbox circles for a while now. I mean, they've been talking about bringing things off to PlayStation before, this past week. But the speculation on this is it's likely going to be Halo Infinite and other titles, and it'll be out by the holiday 2024 season. Now, there's no official statement from Microsoft. And also, they were talking about whether it would be including Starfield, but it sounds like that's going to be likely a no. And I'm not surprised at all about that. I don't think moving it to PlayStation is going to sell any more copies of Starfield than it does now. I mean, there's not a lot of people playing Starfield. It fell flat on its face. And even if they fix it at this point, it kind of lost its luster. I mean, it could turn itself around. I mean, stranger things have happened. There have been other space related games. I mean, No Man's Sky being one of them that have completely redeemed themselves over time. Uh, but for a big studio like Bethesda to release something and then, release an apology patch, that's a little harder to swallow than a small studio doing it. So I think overall that's probably why they're not releasing it on PS5, because it's just extra overhead for not a lot of gain, because nobody's going to want to play it on PS5, just like nobody wanted to play it on Xbox. But that's just my speculation. But this is yet another indicator that these exclusive deals are just not paying off, and you can see that across the board. This is not something new. PlayStation has been talking about bringing their titles to Xbox sooner than they planned, and vice versa. And you've also seen that in the PC area, especially with Epic. I mean, Epic was massive on exclusives. They were hammering on the exclusive deals to try and get people onto the Epic store. You don't really hear about that anymore, and there's a good reason, because it didn't work, and it could not have possibly worked. I mean, Steam is the biggest behemoth in the industry, and you're competing against something that is very well rooted on people's minds and in their lives. So even an exclusive deal is not going to get people to stay on the Epic Store. They might go to the Epic Store to play that game, but it ain't working. And that's another nail in the coffin of exclusive deals is what happened with Epic. And I mean, they're still doing exclusive deals and what have you and all this stuff, but they've scaled way back on that. And it's not surprising in the least to me. And I think, like I said, overall this is a good thing. Being able to play the games you want to play, how you want to play them, is never a bad thing. But I also think, like I said, you got to make better games. It's a double-edged sword. Your console sells based on the games that are there to play for that console, and the games sell based on the number of consoles out there to be able to play the game. So you got to have console sales to get games sold, but you also have to have good games to sell consoles. And every other console generation has managed to deal with that except for this one. And I think a lot of that has to do with both the complexity of developing games, the cost associated with developing games, coupled with the fact that those games are not very engaging to people anymore. And then on the flip side, on the hardware side, you had supply chain issues right when these two consoles were coming out, right when PlayStation and Xbox were releasing their new generation. People couldn't get them. And I think a lot of that ended up landing in people's minds as, well, if I can't get a PlayStation, if I can't get an Xbox, maybe I'll just get this Nintendo Switch and be happy. Or maybe I'll go get an upgraded PC and game on that. Or maybe I'll just hold off and game on my phone, or give up gaming and do something else. Lift weights or something. I don't know. But I mean, a lot of people just did not buy that generation of console, and they're still on the previous generation, probably using it as a streaming box. But which makes sense for Xbox, because they're talking about bringing their games to streaming sticks. So your old Xbox One, it'll be able to play the latest games over streaming. I guess that's probably something that's in the works for them. But overall, I think games like this are what we need. Simple PlayStation 1 graphics. I mean, a lot of people are turning to these indie games, and a lot of people are, like I said, turning to older consoles. I mean, retro gaming is huge these days, and a lot of people are going back to their roots. Going back to PS1s, PS2s, Super Nintendos, N64s. Gaming on the older platforms, and having a great time with it. And it's not a surprise, because it's just it's an era when games were a lot more fun to play, because they knew how to make those gameplay loops. They knew how to make games engaging, whereas these days they're just interactive movies, and people are sick of it. So I think you get enough of those interactive movies, everything starts to look the same, and it starts to feel the same, and it's like, yeah, it's another Ubisoft story. I can skip this one. I don't really care, because it's just like the last 5 Ubisoft stories. They're not even games at this point, and we don't care. Same thing with Square Enix. Same thing with every studio. When you're just making cutscene simulators, everything just kind of blends together, and it's just not engaging. But Like I said, make better games and you'll sell more copies. And I think a part of that solution would be to ditch the exclusives, but you also have to make the games interesting, make them worth our money to buy, worth the time invested in them, worth us, being able to purchase them and enjoy them. So you gotta sell it, I guess. At the end of the day, you gotta make and sell good games. So that's what I got for you guys. Hope you enjoyed that video. If you do like these kind of news reporting ideas, definitely give it a like. And like I said, to go check out Fumes on Steam. I mean, it's an interesting little game and well worth checking out. So that's all I got for you guys, and I will talk to you later.